Well, I think when he said that, he kind of thought that he might have some assets to sell here. I think he kind of changed his mind a little bit within the last week. He was never going to add to this roster, but he probably went into this deadline, like I said, about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, thinking, I have some assets that I can probably get rid of here. But this team's made him think twice. You got the Carolina Hurricanes, who are around where the Flyers are, the New Jersey Devils, who are around where the Flyers are in the standings. They both make moves, kind of sending players out. And Hextall, I think he believes that this team has the opportunity to make the playoffs with what they have, and kind of just decided, you know what, I'll give them a chance. I don't know how much he was really going to get for any of the assets that he has on his roster, especially when you look at trades within the last 24 hours, or at least most of them. It sure looked like the price was coming down on a lot of stuff, where he probably said to himself, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm not going to sell just for the sake of selling. And not really getting a return here. It doesn't hurt to, try again in the summertime and give these guys a chance to make a late push and maybe make the playoffs. If they win tonight and Pittsburgh loses, they're only 1 point out.
Yeah, Dave, and you mentioned there's not a lot of action. Why do you think there wasn't a lot of action around the league in general? I think I had read something that there had been 10 or more deals the last couple of years. It seemed like a slow day around the league.
Yeah, I think there were only 6 this year, and I think it was the case that a lot of general managers were probably looking around at one another, waiting for that first domino to fall, and that the Ladd trade from Winnipeg to Chicago the other day, that was kind of a first step. Followed it. You've got this prospect, Jonathan Drouin, down there in Tampa Bay. That was probably going to be the biggest deal of the deadline if it happened. The Flyers were rumored to be in on to an extent. If Hextall pulled the trigger on that, that really would have surprised me, especially after all the talk he's had about prospects being humble and acting like professionals, and to give up assets to trade for a little brat who's down there in his second year of his entry-level contract demanding a trade and sitting out in his minor league trade. That would have really surprised me. So I think the fact that there was never another big move, a lot of these general managers just kind of sat on their hands and nobody really picked them up.
Yeah, and Philadelphia, obviously, as you mentioned, they're within striking distance here. We talked about Hextall and his MO coming here at North Dakota, Dave, was kind of his teams got out to slow starts, and then the second half they made pushes. Are you seeing different things from him? Why is this team, got themselves in position, in the final month of the year to make a playoff push?
Yeah, I don't think it's so much what Dave Hextall's done to change the Flyers' results recently. I think there have been some games where they've played pretty well and haven't gotten results. That one game last week in Carolina comes to mind as one of their better games really of the season, and they come away with a regulation loss, which was kind of surprising for how well they played. But I think there are some things that are really out of Dave Hextall's control right now. I mean, Claude Giroux leaves for whatever that was, 3 games, I believe. Jake Voracek's out of the lineup now. The Flyers have had guys step up. Sam Gagner is a guy who was one of the players who was rumored to be, potentially moved at the deadline. He's been playing rather well lately. He's got 3 goals in his last 4 games, finally getting top 6 minutes because he wasn't getting that with Hextall when everybody was healthy. I think things are just kind of starting to fall into the right place, and the players are more comfortable. It certainly did take them a while to come around here, and that's nothing new when you look at the Flyers and the awful wins they've started their last several seasons. But I don't know that there's been any big wholesale changes recently other than some guys getting a different opportunity and Michael Neuvirth being red hot.
At Dave G. Isaac on Twitter, Flyers Tonight, you have a piece up about Mason and Neuvirth. Neuvirth has the winning percentage going for him, but the rest of the numbers are somewhat similar. What is your feeling on the goalie situation? There's always a goalie situation, Dave. But what is this year's goalie situation going to shake down when push comes to shove? Who's going to be the guy they call on when needed?
I think it may be a reflection of what we saw maybe a month or a couple of weeks ago. Whoever's healthy, because these are 2 guys who I'm not convinced either one, Mason or Neuvirth, is really. Certainly not 100%, maybe not even 90%. But Neuvirth is kind of in the zone at the moment. And as you alluded to, Steve Mason actually has the higher save percentage over the last 7 games than Neuvirth does. But you just kind of ride the hot hand. I think in college it's a little bit different. I think you really kind of ride one goalie. You have one bona fide number one guy. This is new for Dave Haxtell, and I don't know, because he doesn't really let us in on what he's thinking very often, how much of this is him, how much of this is Kim Dillabaugh, the Flyers goaltending coach, who's also in his first year with the team. It's a little difficult to decipher all that and how these decisions are being made. But we're getting to the point now where Neuwirth has almost played as much as Steve Mason.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. He has 15 wins in fewer games. Mason 13 wins in more games. But, which number to you, Dave, is the most important one that we should be looking at? Is it the wins or losses, or as you mentioned, his save percentage is actually better?
Yeah, it is, and I still don't buy into the theory that teams play differently in front of different goalies. They're two different players. I think overall, I think that Steve Mason's probably a sharper goalie. Michael Neuwirth is certainly more athletic than Steve Mason. I think he moves laterally a little bit better, but I think Mason has some more tools in his tool chest. I'll put it that way. But at the end of the day, what you really need is wins. It doesn't matter if a guy's got a 800 save percentage. If he's able to win you the game and make the big save, then that's the guy that you really put your faith in. And Michael Neuwirth, with that, if you want to call it a save, but there's some angles that might disagree with that. But the big stop the other night with 3 seconds on the clock against Minnesota, that gave the Flyers a ton of momentum. Even though it was the very end of the game, I think they felt that going into the weekend too.
No doubt. And if they end up making the playoffs, that's a moment you might go back to. You look back at that save right there. As Voracek said, they need 10 in this 6-game trip. They don't get 10 if they don't win that first game on that save. They got 4 already. They got a very good chance tonight. Do you have any idea who might be in goal tonight? Do you have a guess? Have they announced that yet?
Well, they haven't announced it, but it will be Michael Neuwirth once again. And I think you're right. You look at that save. That's what I wrote in the lead of my story the other day. Is that'll be? It won't be game 82, but that'll be the Brian Boucher stopping the Rangers in a shootout moment if this team does make the playoffs. I really think that was a huge momentum swing for them. And if they can keep it going here, then Ron Hextall will look smart for not doing anything at the deadline.
Yeah, Michael Raffl is one move they did make at the deadline. He got extended on Saturday, and he was a guy that could have been moved. I mean, at 28 years old, 8 goals, 17 points, not having a great year this year, but the Flyers decided to extend him, and that give you any indication about them going to kind of stay pat at the deadline, which he had said before, but did that kind of cement it?
Yeah, I think it did, because Raffl was another name that was kind of included in the potential trade bait conversation, and he knew it too. On Saturday after the game, he was a little leery. He admitted yesterday, I didn't know if that was the last time I was putting a Flyers jersey on or not. There was rumors of him going to the Florida Panthers. They had already talked about a contract extension. They were getting pretty good headway made on that, and then these trade rumors come out, and the Flyers winning that game certainly helped keep Raffl around. You mentioned his numbers are down. Part of that has to do with him not being on the top line as he was almost exclusively last year, or at least for a significantly more portion of the season than he's had, working for him this year. But he can still be effective for the Flyers, and they think that that can still hold true for the next 3 years as well.
You wonder if there was any action on some of the Flyers today, Dave. Mark Street, who had 3 assists the other night. I mean, he's had the last couple of days here before the break, the deadline. He has played very well. You wonder if the Flyers did take calls and just decided, you know what, we're going to stay with what we got and try to make this last month push and go with the guys we got here, especially losing Del Zotto maybe hurt that opportunity to deal straight for something maybe lesser than they would have.
Yeah, especially because I think anybody else that they would have had to call up from the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, I mean, they've got Andrew McDonald up there now, and he's got a lot of NHL experience, but anybody else that they call up, I believe, would have to make their NHL debut. I don't think they have anybody with real solid NHL experience down there, except for Davis Jawiski, but I don't see him as kind of the guy that they would call up in that spot. But yeah, it'll be interesting to talk to Ron Hextall. He's scheduled to speak at 5 p.m., and I gather that that's the case. But this Flyers team was starting to play better, and he said, you know what, I'll give him the chance here.
Good stuff, Dave. And as we know, this team could look very different next year, specifically on defense. And for Hextall, this is new for the Flyers, is to remain patient and have a lot of their prospects kind of hanging around. We might see a bunch of those guys because of the success of some of the young guys that he had. So he did keep his word. He did stay patient with those young guys.
Yeah, certainly. And I've seen some talk on Twitter the past couple of days. Well, how come Hextall's not clearing house right now? Well, you got to remember that there's still time to make moves in the summer. So next year will be Mark Streit's last year of his contract. The Flyers have the opportunity to move him over the summer or next season as well, because then he becomes a true rental player where his contract will expire at the end of the year, and that $5.25 million cap hit wouldn't be maybe as important as it is right now with still another year left on it. So the Flyers still have opportunities to do some things over the summer if they want to. And they may not even do it right away, because Ron Hextall has been very adamant about the patient part of this plan. And I think you may have to see some players go into training camp and really prove that they're able to play at this level before he starts clearing room and kind of assuming that that's the case. Ivan Provorov is a guy on defense who I would probably think would make the roster next year. And Travis Konecny up front on forward. I think that he's a guy that has what it takes to play in the NHL next season. Maybe that's when you see a guy like Matt Reed get moved. Maybe that's when you see Mark Streit go to a team that's looking to add their defense and a guy who can play on the power play. But just because Ron Hextall didn't do anything at the trade deadline doesn't mean that he's going to sit in his hands over the summer as well. Yeah,
and the two guys, Provorov and Konecny, they both are in the TSN top 50 prospects. The Flyers had 4 guys overall in the top 50, so things are bright, and who knows, maybe we get a surprise playoff this year. All right, Dave Isaac, the Flyers make no moves today. Neuvirth in goal tonight, most likely, and, of course, Dave G. Isaac, Courier Post online. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for having me.